Okay, it's not that people can't compete using force-free methods, but they're probably not going to win.
The question is, where is the evidence? Where are
Well,
the case
I just
studies?
gave
Where
it to
are
you.
the
You want me
before
to
and after?
open up?
Hold
Do you
on,
want me to
hold on.
open up my fucking books for you?
Let me finish.
Listen, let me just stop. Time out. Time out. Time out. Time out. Time out. If this is gonna...
Taliban allows men to beat wives as long as they don't bruise or break bones. So, explain yourself.
IGP doesn't impress me because it's pattern training. That dog has been in that field doing the same sequences over and over and over and over. They should do damn well. Take a dog out of a shelter that is completely unstable, scared to death, super aggressive, fear aggression, and try that same stuff you're doing on IPG, and you're going to fuck that dog up. We're very close to ending this.
Welcome back to the Super K-Night Show. I'm your host, William Chandler-Duff, and today we're going to be talking to a reasonably outspoken guest, William Bangura. William, welcome to the Super K-Night Show.
Hey, glad to be here, William. Two good names here.
Okay, so could you give us a little bit of your background? How long have you been training dogs for? And what qualifies you in your mind to be a relevant authority in the dog training world?
Sure. So I started training dogs at the age of 9 in 1975. My dad was a police officer. He bred and raised German Shepherds and competed in AKC obedience, and also competed at the time. It was called Schutzhund. Obviously, you know, it's gone through some different changes. So at a young age, I was a junior handler, titling dogs in AKC obedience. You know, had fun, played around with a little bit of Schutzhund, didn't compete in that, obviously, not as a child. And I started training dogs professionally in 1990. And I started here in Arizona working for a guy by the name of Andy Looper, a balance trainer. And he did everything from every kind of obedience, puppies, adults. We did every imaginable behavior problem, from potty training to severe dog aggression with owner-directed aggression, severe bites. I did personal protection training. We trained protection dogs. After that, I started my own business, and been doing it ever since. I've got a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's degree in psychology. Spent most of my time training dogs as a balance trainer. Used every tool that's pretty much out there. My preference as a balance trainer was to use the e-collar, best practices, low level, just enough for the dog to want to work to turn it off. Not blasting dogs or anything like that. And I worked a lot with aggressive dogs. Again, reactive and aggressive. That was kind of my specialty. About 4 years ago or so, mentoring trainers that worked for me. At one time, I had 14 trainers working for me, but this is 4 years ago. I had 2 other trainers working with me for me. And we were having a discussion, and I said, you know, I think at some point it'll be required that trainers are going to have some kind of formal education, some kind of legitimate certification. And I said, and it wouldn't surprise me if in the United States at some point there's going to be a ban or heavy restriction on aversive tools. We've got 22 countries and territories around the world that have already done that. There's a mountain of scientific evidence, a convergence of evidence that all points in the same direction, that aversive tools aren't necessary, and that there's no real advantage training-wise to using aversive tools and methods. Now, When I talked to them about this, I suggested that they study and get certified. Well, I'm the kind of boss, the kind of leader. I'm not going to ask you to do something that I'm not going to do. Well, as I started getting into that process, there was a lot of supplementary education that I needed to dive back into because human psychology versus animal behavior, yeah, there's a lot in common, but there's a lot of things that are different as well. So I went on this quest of having to learn a whole lot and not knowing when I first started looking at the certification that I was going to have to sign a standard of practice and an ethics statement that I'm not going to use aversive tools. So that was interesting because I had committed to do this to take the test um, with my trainers. And it was through the process of studying that my belief system and the decades of experience started getting questioned. And it was hard for me. I spent years arguing, debating, railing against positive reinforcement, reward-based training only, that dogs needed corrections. So I'm now struggling with my own confirmation bias. I'm struggling with my own cognitive dissonance. And I really had to sort things out and try to make sense of it for me. Anyway, I went through the process. I got certified, started training without using any aversive tools, stayed away from positive punishment, stayed away from negative reinforcement, and stayed away from negative punishment. Using positive reinforcement in all training situations, differential reinforcement, counter conditioning, desensitization. Today, I work with 98, 99% of the cases I work with severe aggression, fears, phobias, obsessive compulsive behaviors, self-mutilating behaviors, which kind of falls into that last one, obsessive compulsive. I do both in-home private behavior consultations as well as remote virtual consultations, both here in the U.S. Once in a while, I'll get clients outside the U.S. I'm accredited through International Canine Behaviorist, which is in the UK. The Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers as a behavior consultant and a trainer. Applied ethology, family dog mediation through Kim Brophy, took her certification course, and I'm also fear-free certified practitioner. And constantly trying to learn more each and every day. The one thing nice about certifications is that it forces you to do continuing education. And I do about 100 hours a year of continuing education.
Right.
That's kind of my background, unless you have any more specific questions about my background.
No, I think you've covered it all there. But could you clarify what precisely your stance is in relation to the utilization of aversive stimuli in dog training?
Where my stance is about it? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
My stance is that it's not necessary. I don't believe there's any behavior that you can't teach a dog using positive reinforcement. I don't think you need negative reinforcement. I don't think you need positive punishment to teach. I'm sorry?
And then there's no behavior that you can also not eliminate.
Exactly.
Without using positive reinforcement only strategies as well. Is that your claim there as well?
Exactly. And I've worked with the worst of the worst cases to this point. I can tell you I haven't needed it. And, you know, in the U.S., we've got about 100 veterinary behaviorists, or in North America, and you've got equivalent to veterinary behaviorists. I don't know if they're called that. Behavior
They
vets.
are called that, yes.
Yeah. And they work with the most difficult cases, and they don't use those tools, and they're having success. Sometimes they're using medication along with it. I'm not a veterinary behaviorist. I don't prescribe medication. But, and there's tens of thousands of trainers and behavior consultants like myself that are every day working with extremely difficult cases and having success, including predatory chasing, which is the one. If there's one thing that I hear usually from balance trainers, that they'll say, well, you got to have a correction. You've got to use an aversive. You're not dealing with predatory chasing. Well, I've got a Facebook group, a private Facebook group for predatory chasing solutions, force free. We've got over 600 members, video after video after video after video being shared of doing just that, preventing dogs from chasing, stopping dogs from chasing, calling them back. So, I don't feel that it's necessary, and the evidence doesn't show that it's necessary. Like I said, there's a convergence of scientific evidence that shows each and every time it's not necessary. The other thing is, positive reinforcement doesn't come with the same potential welfare risks. So they're safer. So, in medicine, if we're looking at an intervention, we take a look at that intervention. We say, well, is there an intervention that is less risky, less invasive, comes with less potential risks and side effects? And they would go with that. It's the same thing with training. But the problem is there's no requirement for formal education for trainers and behavior consultants. There's no requirement for any certification. So there's a lot of people doing things by tradition, old school. But when you really get into the evidence, you really get into the science, and I'm not talking about one study. I'm not talking about one line of one study. I'm talking about studies throughout the globe in multiple different disciplines that all feed into this, that you don't need aversives, that reward-based training is just as effective, and it doesn't come with the risks. That's my position.
Okay. Well, Will, you posted this on social media. Quote, "This is horrible. How is this acceptable in 2026? Angry face emoji. It's just communication. It's just accountability. They need to understand what no is. You have to show them who's boss. There have to be consequences. It's humane if you know how to do it. It's just getting their attention. It's leadership." Angry face emoji again, and that's the end of the quote. And then you added an article titled, "Taliban allows men to beat wives as long as they don't bruise or break bones." So explain yourself. How on earth does comparing the many dog trainers who talk about leadership, boundaries, and consequences, even if you fiercely disagree with their methods, to the Taliban beating their wives, constitute professional, evidence-based discourse? And do you not see how grotesque and disproportionate that comparison is?
Well, there's one thing about satire, but there's a lot of truth in satire. And here's the thing. One of the oldest things in the playbook since the beginning of time: force and oppression, the need to control. And that's what this is all about.
So you're saying that I'm taking it out of context?
To a certain extent, you're taking it out of context. I'm not saying that trainers that use aversive tools and methods are torturing animals and beating them, but from the concept of oppression, force, control, this is a systemic issue that's not just in dog training. It's something that has been going on with humans from the beginning of time. This, like the same debate about, okay, children need to be spanked. They need discipline. They need to be spanked, and they need to, have some grit, toughens them up, like that's going to also give them, kids are resilient when they've got strong discipline. Well, thank God the science have shown that's not true either. And a lot of people aren't doing that today. because again, it's not necessary. But
But you,
when
you,
people
d-
don't
you,
have
you
the skills,
deliberately
and when
chose
people don't have
to
the
use
skills and
the
ability,
Taliban as your example.
that was something that popped up in my feed that day, and I'm like, you know what? There's some parallels here, just like there's parallels with ICE.
So you think that there's parallels between the Taliban, one of the most barbaric regimes on the planet, when it comes to violence against women, and balanced dog trainers?
The analogy, the connection is about systematic oppression, force, and control. And that we find humans been involved with since the beginning of time. And it goes into multiple systems. And one of those systems are dog training. These are archaic, barbaric methods of control and oppression that have been around forever. And everywhere, it doesn't matter what system we're talking about, when knowledge and skills have peaked and people don't know how to get the results they're looking for, then they opt for force. I get it. I get it. And as far as balance trainers, I was doing balance training probably longer than you've been alive. So I get it. I believe the same things that you believe.
Do you stand by that post? Or do you regret making that post?
If somebody's offended by it and doesn't see it the way I intended it to, then I apologize for that because I wouldn't want that. And sometimes when, obviously, the downside of social media is that you're limited by how and what you can communicate. And people aren't going to always get the idea. But I will say this. I think what's barbaric is when there's a mountain of evidence out there that shows that using an electronic collar and a prong collar and other aversive methods and tools are completely unnecessary. There's no advantage to them over rewards-based training, and there's risk. And people that aren't willing to educate themselves with as much information that's out there in 2026, everybody's heard about it. Everybody knows, but certain people, they don't care. And whether it be that they don't want to leave their tribe.
William, we'll get to all of that. But really, the question is, does this kind of rhetoric help dogs? Or does it just make you look unhinged and tribal?
It depends. It gets attention and it gets the word out. And there's different ways of getting information out there. Whether it helps the dogs or not is to be determined, is to be seen. My ultimate goal is to get these tools banned in the United States and anywhere else in the world. My other goal is to see the dog training industry regulated and licensed, where we've got a standard of practice that's based in reward-based training, that's evidence-based, science-based, and also takes into consideration welfare science, because there's an ethical component to this. And so when balanced trainers choose to take ethics and toss them away, and I get it, I believed everything that all the rhetoric that comes out of the balanced trainers' mouths as well. You know, does it help dogs when balanced trainers are saying, gosh, if we don't have shock collars and prong collars, dogs are dying from behavioral euthanasia, which is total bullshit. There's not one study, there's not any data that proves that. Dogs in the countries where these tools are banned, in the 22 countries and territories, they're not standing outside with lines going around the corner waiting to be euthanized. That's ridiculous.
Let's move on from the Taliban meltdown. And
let's move on from that and the dog daddy.
And let's move on to something you repeatedly brag about on your website, your podcast, and your marketing, and that's the numbers. So you say that you've trained 24 to 35,000 plus dogs.
24,000 plus, yeah. I had 14 trainers working for me at one time, had a very large dog training business in the United States, and I do behavior consulting virtually. I had my hands in each one of those, yeah. to a certain extent. Didn't necessarily do all of the training for all of those dogs, but I had my hand in each one of those cases, yeah.
And you've been training dogs for 30 to 35 years
Since
or about that, right?
1990, what is that? I mean, professionally since 90.
Okay. But that is an astonishing figure.
Not really, not when you got 14 trainers working for you.
So that's roughly 2,000 dogs per year.
9,000 contacts in about 5 to 7 years is about what we average. No.
So that's 5 to 6 new dogs every single day, 7 days a week.
That was about right, yeah.
But these aren't simple puppy classes, right? I mean, you position yourself as the guy who handles severe aggression, extreme fear cases, separation anxiety.
When I had the 14 trainers working for me back then versus now, we did everything across the board. Everything across the board. And the model that we had when we were using e-collars and doing balanced trainers was mainly, we're going to do 2 private lessons, and then we're going to put you in unlimited group for the life of the dog. So yeah, it was very easy to move from client to client. Also board and train.
Even highly experienced trainers with massive operations don't throw around numbers like that without serious proof. And the question is, where is the evidence? Where are the case studies? Where are the before and after?
Do you want me to open up my fucking books for you?
Let me finish.
Listen, let me just stop. Time out. Time out. Time out. Time out. Time out. If this is gonna be about character assassination, which is all you've done so far.
No. This is really not.
We're going to end this.
This is not character assassination. I'm going to end this very quickly. If we're not going to talk about training, behavior, if we're not going to talk about the science behind that, and you just want to attack my character, then this is over. So you decide, because we're very close to ending this. Well, I'm just going through what you've said in the past, what you've posted about publicly, and
that's available in the public. Anybody can go to my website and look at it.
Right.
If you're going to sit here and question,
you can understand though how one might be somewhat skeptical. If you're going to sit here
and question my character and not look at my work, my knowledge, my skills, my understanding, and the decades that I've been doing this, we're done with this. Been doing this long enough. I've got nothing to prove to anybody. I came on here as a courtesy to you.
When big claims are made by any of my guests, you can look at all the guests that I've had on so far. When someone makes a really big claim, then you've got to ask them, hey, what's the backstory behind that claim, right?
Are you ready to move on?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about stomach ulcers. You've posted about how aversive stimuli supposedly cause stomach ulcers in dogs. You cited old rat studies like Weiss, 1970, on unpredictable shock. Is that really your position, that using aversive stimuli that is clear, predictable, and most importantly, avoidable on the dog's part is going to give them gastric ulcers?
Not on dogs. I was talking about the study with rats. And both the groups that had predictability and the group that had predictability and control, they still had gastric lesions. So it was causing physical harm to all the rats in that group. When we're taking a look at aversive control, even if it's predictable, even if it's predictable and controllable, it still lights up the stress, the threat circuitry within the brain and the nervous system. There's many studies, many newer studies. A newer study with Kane and Sears in 2026, and also Limbakia and Woods. And I've talked specifically, personally, to Dr. David Knight in the Woods study, and Dr. Paseo in the Limbakia study. And they both said very clearly, and I've got the emails to show you, that there's no way, even at low levels using electrical stimulation, that that is going to be neurologically neutral, even with controllability and predictability. Will the stress, threat and stress be less? Yes, it'll be less, but that doesn't make it go away. And it's unnecessary if we're talking about then using that with dogs. And then they did those studies across different mammals. They didn't do it with dogs, but they did it with different mammals. And we know the nervous system is almost identical. And we know also through multiple studies that have been duplicated that when we use aversives with dogs, even best practices with people that the Electronic Collar Manufacturers Association nominated as the best experts using best practices, low-level e-collar use, those dogs had more stress signals. Those dogs had more negative cognitive judgment bias. So when it's unnecessary, and when we know that when you're using aversive control, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, it's lighting up that threat and stress circuitry each and every time. It's not like it's one event. People, when they're training dogs, are repeating things. So that's got a lot of welfare risk. And I realize that a lot of trainers, like I myself, have high drive dogs, Belgian Malinois, Shepherds, other high drive dogs that can handle a shit ton of pressure. But just because they look happy and they're amped up doesn't mean that we're not lighting up the threat and stress circuitry in the nervous system. There's no way to not light it up when you're using aversives. It's impossible. And even when you've got a secondary punisher and the dog's getting that cue, well, it was still conditioned through classical conditioning. So that's still, even if you're not using the prong collar, even if you're not using the e-collar after you've conditioned it, well, that cue is conditioned with that aversive. And in order for the dog to engage in the behavior, it's lighting up the threat and stress circuitry. And when it's not necessary, when there are alternatives to reward-based training, and when they come with less risks, that's what we should be doing. Especially, and the other thing I want to mention, that today I'm dealing with pet dogs. So I'm not talking about competition, protection sports. You know, a lot of balance trainers like to get into that. Look, everybody can give a story about a dog that they're training with an e-collar and a prong collar that looks happy and just fine. But I'm not saying that people are abusing dogs with these tools. I'm not saying they're screaming and yelping. They don't have to be to activate nociception. They don't have to be to activate the amygdala, the aqueductal gray, the stress centers in the brain. And it's not just one study, multiple studies. It's not just one country, multiple countries. As I said, there's a convergence of evidence.
So, do you believe that the responsible use of aversive training aids like head halters, prong, and electric collars can cause stomach ulcers in dogs?
I don't know. That's not been studied.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but it is my understanding that you claim to be able to reliably resolve predatory behavioral issues in dogs without the use of aversive stimuli.
Correct.
So I'm interested in how you might typically approach dealing with predatory behaviors that you seek to suppress without the use of aversive training aids.
First of all,
which of course are so far the only publicly proven way to resolve these issues.
Like I said, first of all, any behavior, including predatory chasing, can be helped with positive reinforcement, you don't need the use of aversives. You mentioned suppression. We don't suppress the behavior. That is not our goal. We want to resolve that behavior. We want to do our
And
best to
what do you mean
extinguish
by
that behavior.
what do you mean by resolve? So,
What I
in the
mean by
case of
resolve,
let's
first
say
of all,
car chasing, we'll use
yeah,
car chasing
yeah,
as an example
yeah.
here.
So,
We want that to be completely eliminated, right?
oh, that would be great if it was completely eliminated, but I think that's, I wouldn't make that claim. For example, the Johnson and Wynn study, not all the dogs in that study, even with being blasted at the highest level of the e-collar, stopped chasing. When they took their training,
all of the dogs did stop chasing. Yeah,
no, they did not.
it was just
No.
a few of the dogs had to be removed from the cohort because
And they didn't stop.
they went over the
Right.
level
And they
over
couldn't
the
stop them. They
maximum
couldn't
number
stop them
of
from
shots.
chasing. They couldn't stop
No,
them
no,
from chasing.
they did stop them from chasing. 100% of the dogs did stop chasing. It was just a few of the dogs. They went over the number of times that they were meant to use the electric collar within their protocols.
Some of the dogs, as you know, had to be removed because they reached that limit. And 67% returned to chasing.
So it was my understanding that 100% of the dogs did stop chasing, but
No method. No method. If anybody, nobody can say that their method or tool is going to be 100% successful 100% of the time. That would be wonderful. But to
no,
make
but in
that,
this study, in
to
this
make that
actual study,
guarantee in a training context, because you asked me about suppressing and stopping chasing all the time. Nobody can guarantee that. What I can tell you is with force-free positive reinforcement training, the durability, the reliability of the dog not chasing is much stronger than when somebody's using aversives. I'll never argue against the fact that, yes, you can create behaviors with aversives, you can stop behaviors with aversives, and sometimes you can do that really quickly. But I've gotten away from suppression and avoidance-based learning, and I'm training dogs to want to do this because they're motivated, because it's fun, it's joyful. We're not lighting up the threat and stress circuitry. They're not doing it to turn off something unpleasant. Okay. And it's, again, it's an ethical thing too. And when we've got plenty of studies out there that show that there's no advantage to aversives, and there's an alternative.
So I'd say like that study that you mentioned there, the Anna Marie Johnson and Clive Wynn study, I'd say that's a clear example of a study that shows the benefits of the responsible utilization of aversive control.
Here's the problem with the study.
In dog training.
Here's the problem with the study. It's not so much a study that is designed to show how to stop predatory chasing. It was kind of a study to show how you can create and design a study where force-free training would fail. That was not force-free.
Explain why
the
that's
protocols
the case.
in that study are not at all what force-free positive reinforcement trainers would do for predatory chasing. You had a bunch of balance trainers, e-collar trainers trying to be force-free trainers that didn't know what the hell they were doing.
So what would you do?
Well, there's a lot of different things, and you're going to do different things with different dogs, obviously. So let me take a drink. One of the first things I've got to do is stop the dog from rehearsing the behavior. If the dog keeps on rehearsing the behavior, it gets more and more habituated, more and more conditioned, not just the physical behaviors, the outward behaviors, but the underlying emotional state and what's going on with their nervous system. So I've got to be creative. I've got to know what are the triggers, where are the triggers, when are they happening, and I've got to make sure that to the best of my ability, my dog's not going to encounter that while I'm doing the training, while I'm modifying the behavior. I don't want the dog to rehearse it. Now, then proactively, I'm going to begin working with the dog to counter condition and desensitize the dog to whatever the trigger is that the dog likes to chase. Okay, whether it be another animal, whether it's a car, whether it's a bike. I've got to do that slowly and gradually. Most people work too fast, and then the dog goes over threshold and they say, "Ah, it doesn't work." Yeah, it does work. You got to move slower. Got to know how to read body language with the dog. Will you make
So how long does it take?
it? It's going to vary from dog to dog. It could take 4 weeks. It could take 16 weeks. Depends on the
Hmm.
dog. Maybe it takes longer than that. All right. I've got to, through management and safety, keep the dog safe, keep the dog from doing that. I'm not going to let my dog wander freely if I know I've got a dog that chases. Okay. I'm going to have a line or a leash on that dog. And I'm going to try to avoid that. Now, if I'm out and about and we get surprised with that trigger and the dog goes to chase, right? And I've got a short line or a long line and I got a harness and the dog hits the end of that and that's aversive. Well, that's an emergency situation. That wasn't me implementing an aversive. And again, I've said this on Ivan's podcast. I'll say it again. The only legitimate use for force is in an emergency. And that tells you that, oh, I've got a gap in my training right here if that happens. And now that's feedback too to say, you know what? I got to go back to the drawing board.
So,
I've got some more work to do.
so there's going to be a lot of people that are listening to this and they're thinking, well, this sounds great. We've got this border collie and he chases cars and that's his favorite thing to do. It's just as soon as he gets out of the house, it's boom, where's the cars? And they're listening to this and they're thinking, well, I can resolve these issues without
Predatory chasing,
using,
they better have a
without
professional
using the
helping
electric
them.
collar.
They better have a
Without
professional helping them that knows what they're doing. It's
Pardon?
not easy. It's one of the most difficult behaviors to modify. They better have a professional helping them. Yeah, there are some lay people that will do it, and we've got lay people because we've got professionals and lay people in our predatory chasing solutions group that's force-free. And we've got people that are doing it, but I recommend that people get some professional help with somebody who has experience with that behavior and has a lot of experience in
But
force-free work.
let's go through some of the steps that you would take, just so that we can get a feel for how you approach
There's
this.
a lot of different things I would do.
And what the
Classical.
end goal, what happens in the end goal. So we know first of all, you stop the rehearsal of the behavior. You
Yes.
reduce or completely
Safety
eliminate
and
as
management,
much
stop the rehearsal.
to the extent to the highest of your ability. You eliminate the rehearsal of that behavior. And what's your next step after that?
Then typically I'm going to be also working on engagement exercises with the dog so that I can keep the dog motivated and engaged with me.
Without the trigger in
Right, without the
involved at
trigger.
all.
We're first
Right.
we're gonna condition that, get that solid. Okay. Depending upon the dog, I might do different pattern games with, Leslie McDevitt's pattern games. I'm going to work on.
Describe those. Describe the pattern games. What
There's
is
a
a
lot
pattern
of
game?
them. There's, the Super Bowl pattern game, which I really like. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I use that more with fearful dogs. I created one
just for
similar to
those
that.
who aren't familiar. What does that
The
look
Super Bowl
like?
pattern game.
Yeah.
Well, imagine that you've got 8 bowls or 5 bowls or 6 bowls, whatever. Maybe they're 2 feet apart. You got them in a straight line. Okay. You walk the dog up to the first bowl, put food at the dog's nose, lure the dog down to the bowl, drop the food in the bowl, the dog takes it. Then you go to the next bowl and you do that. You condition that, right? Now, the next step's going to be I go to the bowl and the dog looks to me because I didn't put food in it. And when the dog looks to me, I'm going to mark and then I'm going to put food in the bowl. So I'm teaching the dog engage, disengage in a certain way to be focused and looking at me. Then I would start doing that with distractions. It could be somebody waving their hand, right? And the dog looks and I get the dog to look back to me and I'm going to mark and reward that. So I'm going to work on impulse control exercises, drop, leave it, staying on place with heavy distractions, going into lots of different environments with heavy distractions. And we're going to make it fun. And we're also going to work on a very strong recall over and over. We're going to condition the hell out of that. I might
And
do
how does that look like for your very strong
the recall? Well, we're gonna do a lot of repetitions. We're gonna have the highest value food rewards. We're gonna keep the sessions very short so the dog's really motivated to do that. And we're gonna start generalizing that into different environments and different distractions. We know that something chasing would be ultimately one way to look at it would be a distraction. It's just the ultimate distraction, right? Especially, like I said, if we got a border collie, something that's got some really strong predatory chasing innate with their genetics. Um, then, when I've got some of that in place, those foundational behaviors, then we're going to start bringing out the real trigger. But we're going to be at a distance, and that trigger is going to be moving slow. And when the dog looks at that trigger, then I'm going to mark and reward. And the dog, when I mark, is going to look back to me because the dog doesn't want to chase. I'm far enough away. Dog sees it, a little bit of interest, but really doesn't care. And I'm going to condition the dog. When you look at that thing, that the trigger that you want to chase, I'm going to mark. Dog's going to look back to me. The dog's going to get a reward. I'm going to do that over and over and over. Then after that's conditioned, maybe a few days to a week, just depends on the dog, I'm going to change something. The dog's going to look at the trigger, but I'm not going to mark. Well, the dog then, because of expectation and conditioning, looks back to me like, hey, dude, where's my mark? Where's my food? Well, that's really what I wanted. Look at the trigger, look back to me. Now I'm going to mark and reward. That's really what I want. And so gradually, systematically, we're getting closer and closer and closer at slow speeds with the trigger. Then we back up and we start picking up the speed a little bit. Well, the dog understands the game. So now this part's going a little faster. And then we back up again and we go even faster with the trigger until that trigger can be as fast as it typically is going to be in a normal day-to-day life. And we're very close to that. But it takes time. It's not like, because we're not suppressing behavior. First of all, we're taking away the reinforcer. And even if you punish and suppress that behavior with an e-collar, you've done nothing to eliminate the fact that that chasing behavior is a reinforcer. That's still there with the dog. You're just suppressing the behavior. There's no extinction. And that's why 67% of the dogs in the Johnson and Wynn study, when they were brought into another environment, went right back to chasing. And that's where I say, somebody say, hey, e-collar's faster. Well, if it stops the dog right then and there, maybe. When you say faster, what happens 4 months from now and you're a little slow catching the dog in the e-collar? Because once the dog starts chasing, most e-collars aren't going to get him back. Once the dog's chasing, most positive reinforcement's not going to get the dog back. The goal is to condition the dog not to chase. And like I said, whether it's an e-collar, whether it's force-free, nobody can guarantee 100% success 100% of the time with 100% of the dogs and 100% of the handlers. That's just unrealistic. But in the long run, doing it force-free is going to be more reliable. You're going to have better duration of behavior with that. And I've done it both ways. And I can say that from experience, that it works. And probably 100 of our 600 members are having great success, the ones that are really active.
And what do you mean by success? So
success would mean the highest level of extinction they can get of that behavior, and being able to have their dogs around those triggers without going into chasing. Either the dog's not chasing at all, or the dog is conditioned. Hey, when you see prey or a car or a bike, you look to me and good things happen. That's what I guess that's the best way I would consider success. Now, is there going to be a failure from here now and then? Sure. There could be a failure in the training plan. There could be a failure with the handler. Like I said, no method anybody can guarantee 100%. If they do, I'm going to call BS on it.
See, that's the problem with the predatory chasing, and the reason why people take it so seriously a lot. Well, one of the behaviours that people take very seriously is got to be the predatory chasing, and it's because in so many situations it has to be eliminated completely. Right? Let's take my original example of the border collie chasing the cars.
That's a great goal.
That's a car chasing dog is a dog that's knocking on death's door.
You can stop it 100% by securing the environment where the dog lives so it can't run and chase, whether that means fencing. Okay. If the dog digs and you digs out of the fence or climbs over it, well, you do something to make it stop.
These are management techniques, and obviously,
when you take your dog out, you have
what
him
you're
on a
going
leash.
to do. But we need something, and so far we do have a way in which we can very reliably suppress those behaviors, eliminate those behaviors.
You think with an e-collar?
And the question is, can we do that?
With an e-collar? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, with the electric collar. The electric collar is by far the most ethical an efficient choice to suppress those sorts of behaviors. But I want to stay on the predatory chasing thing because this is really relevant to a lot of people. And
it's
so
not.
To get back to your protocols.
Can I say something?
Absolutely, of course you can.
It's very relevant to people. But when you look at the list of behaviors that people are having a problem with their dog, that's really low on the list. It's a problem, and it's a very difficult one to address. It's one of the most difficult, okay? That and intra-dog aggression, multiple dogs in the house fighting. But you can manage those things, first and foremost. And then number two, you can address that pretty damn reliably without using aversives. And when the study that shows 67% of the dogs went back to chasing, when there were several dogs that got shocked multiple times that didn't stop, and they couldn't shock them more based on the guidelines of that study, and they had to be pulled. That's not reliability. All right. That's horrible reliability. Now, the only reason why they had no success and no dogs stopped with the force-free training, there was no force-free training protocols used. There were no force-free trainers training those dogs. In that 7-hour debate with Ivan, I challenged him. He knows the person who funded that.
So you think
study.
if you were the one training those dogs, you think you would have had an equal or higher level of success to the dogs in the electric collar
Our
group?
training would have taken longer, but yes, I do believe we would have had greater success and greater reliability and greater durability. They did not have force-free trainers training force-free, and they didn't know what they were doing. There is that, like I said, that study proves how do you design a study
you'd be open
that
to
force-free will
participating
fail.
in a.
I'm sorry?
You'd be open to participating in a study like that?
I challenged Ivan to get it funded, and I will do the force-free side because that was the biggest problem with that study. And that's one of the reasons he's not publishing that 7 hours. Because this is the hill he wants to die on. E-collars are necessary. You can't stop predatory chasing. That, and he thinks you can't stop noise phobias with force-free methods. Those are his two things. Talk to him long enough to know the two hills he'll die on. Both of those, very effectively. Matter of fact, one of the largest research studies with the largest group of dogs was done on dogs with noise sensitivities and noise phobias, and showed that counter conditioning and desensitization is the gold standard for that.
Do you have any video proof of what it is you're saying? Or not video proof, but video examples of a dog that's not just playfully chasing something, but a dog that's actually really serious in their pursuit of whatever it is that they're pursuing, whether that be cars, squirrels, foxes, whatever. And after your training, those issues being resolved.
So I don't have videos of my clients or me doing it. Especially where I live, it is rare. I've had a few calls for that, okay? But in the group, our predatory chasing solutions group, the Force Free, we've got dozens and dozens, lots of videos showing dogs in chase being able to call them back. And it's the real deal. Most of the videos you're seeing there, the dogs aren't chasing at all. But we've got some where they've got them to the point where they chase and they can call them back. For me, I'll get yelled at for this. The ones that chased and they called back, I'm a little bit skeptical if the dog really had super strong prey drive, because it's my belief once they're in that stage of predatory chasing, in that sequence, once they're going, you're not going to get most back. Once they're in the chase, you're not going to get them back. The goal is to desensitize them.
You're not going to get them back if you're solely only using positive
I'm saying
reinforcement.
That I think once they're in the chase, it's very, very, very difficult. Even with e-collars, it's difficult. Depends on the dog.
Really?
Mm-hmm. If they're the real deal, if they are the real fucking deal, man, they want to chase after prey and they're going to fucking kill it. That's predatory chasing. They're going to get that prey. They are going to kill it. And they've done it before, and they got a strong reinforcement history. Yeah. Once they hit that red line they're chasing, good luck getting them back. I'm not saying you can't. But my goal would be to try to do that. That would be part of the training plan. However, the real goal is to prevent them from actually chasing. So they're going to be doing something else before they hit that part of the sequence, the predatory chasing sequence.
Well,
that's my way.
What I'll do is I'll share a link to that group, and if you want me to, and I'd also be
but the thing
really
is,
interested in joining that group
The problem
myself.
with that is they have to agree to follow force-free training protocols. If they're not a force-free trainer, we don't want them in the group, because this is not a group about debating methods, debating tools.
So someone like me, for example, someone who does utilize aversive control judiciously within my training programs, I wouldn't be welcome in the group.
Here's the thing. I could make an exception and let you in, but if you're going to be debating methods and tools, then you're not.
I wouldn't want to debate anything.
Right.
I'm
right. But if you want to go in there to see,
if
you want to go in there to see videos of stuff, yeah, I'm happy to let you in. But I'm not going to let in people that are balanced trainers. I would do that because you want to see the videos. I'm not big, when people balance trainers are like, show me proof, show me a video. Most professionals, if we're looking at that, that's like, what, you want me to whip my dick out? Are we showing who's bigger? That's just stupid shit. Why would you not believe somebody, and why would somebody lie? That's just stupid.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think video proof, or not video proof, but video examples are really, really helpful within the dog training.
Go to the force-free predatory chasing
we're all prone to
solutions.
exaggerating certain things and so on. So you're saying let's go to predatory chasing behaviors involving animals before we end the podcast.
Okay.
Let's say we have a dog that's killed livestock before, killed a sheep, let's say, before. It's your belief that you could, utilizing only positive reinforcement-based strategies, or to the best of your abilities in terms of your intentions are solely to use that. If there's an emergency, like you say, that's somewhat different. But you could resolve that issue entirely in terms of the dog no longer wanting to chase sheep. You're able to go around a sheep field, and the dog's not going off to kill sheep, using only positive reinforcement.
Again, I'm not going to guarantee 100%. No method can guarantee 100%, but we can work on that.
I'm saying
behavior.
reliably. Can you
we can get the
reliably
dog
achieve
pretty
that?
reliable.
No, I'm saying with most dogs that have that issue.
Yeah.
Can you reliably resolve that by only utilizing positive reinforcement?
Yeah, but we can't guarantee that it'll be 100%, just like nobody can with an e-collar. But yeah, absolutely. Again, there's no behavior you can't change.
Okay.
Modify, stop with using positive reinforcement. And the problem is that people think this is just about giving cookies. given treats. And it's a whole system of engineering behavior. And as a prior balance trainer, I thought I knew a lot about positive reinforcement. I didn't. And I guarantee most balance trainers don't. And we're part of a tribe, you know. It's hard to leave that tribe because you get ostracized. And that was your support system. And the other thing is the reinforcement that a trainer gets from being able to suppress a behavior very quickly with an e-collar, that feedback, that dopamine hit that the trainers get, we get reinforced big time. So we want to keep on doing it. We don't want to let it go. And there's a livelihood. The people have a business. This is how they're making their money, and they don't think they can do it without it. So I get it. I get it. I've been there, done that. But I'm telling you, there is no behavior that you cannot install. There's no behavior that you cannot take out of the dog using force-free positive reinforcement methods. You don't need aversives. And there's plenty of studies out there. I could go through 58 studies with you, one at a time, that all point to the same thing. It's not necessary, and there are welfare risks, and you don't have the same kind of welfare risk using positive reinforcement.
Would you be willing to demonstrate this with a dog that has those issues?
I'm willing to do this. As I said to Ivan, fund the study, get the study. I will train and show, and that's my challenge. I will train and show how it can be done with force-free methods. I'm not going to do it just to please a trainer. If we're going to, because I've got nothing to prove. It's been done over and over and over.
You don't understand that. If you, it's not about pleasing trainers. It's really, no, it's not. No, not at all. It's about if what you do works and you can prove that, then everyone will change. So far, it's never been proven.
No,
if what you can do works and you can prove that, everyone will change. I will change in a heartbeat to what it is that you do.
William, force-free trainers have posted publicly video after video after video.
Okay?
No, everybody makes an excuse why they're not going to accept that. Oh, the dog wasn't really a chaser. You know, oh, yeah, but if the dog was here, that wouldn't work. Oh, if this was changed, it wouldn't work. Look, because of cognitive dissonance and because of their own bias, it's really hard for them to accept that. Because you know what accepting that is? Accepting that means that you've got to deal with the fact that however long you've been training using aversives, it was unnecessary. That's a hard pill to swallow. That's a hard pill to swallow. And again,
I really don't think that is the case. It's
with the vast majority of people. I'm not saying there's not an exception out there, but most. I mean,
I've learned from some very I've learned from many different force-free trainers, and there's
it's like
a number
Susan
of them
Garrett.
that
Look
I really respect.
Look what Susan Garrett has done with force-free training, winning a world title in agility. Okay.
Right, but that's very different. That's very different to what we're talking about here.
Right, but that's a difficult thing to do. Win a world title.
It's a very difficult thing
around all those distractions, doing what's required of that. All right, very complicated stuff to do. And there's, for example, in the UK and in Germany, the police train their canines with positive reinforcement. They're not allowed to use aversive tools like prong collars, e-collars, choke collars.
They do utilize.
No, they don't. I can show you the data. I can show you the data. No, they don't.
The data. I don't need to see the
I can
the data.
give you the direct quote from the chief that runs the program.
Well, I know many police dog handlers. I know many police dogs, and why don't we see more force-free trainers achieving high levels of success in, say, IGP?
Well, one of the things is that when you use aversives, you can get a faster dog and a flashier dog. Okay? It's not that people can't compete using force-free methods, but they're probably not going to win. You know, when they're not using force, they're probably not going to win. Hey, I'll never say You cannot get a dog to do something with an aversive. You can get a dog to do something fast. They can be flashy as hell. And you can get them so fucking aroused that they look like they're the happiest dog in the world. Okay. I liken using those aversives in competition like steroids, cheating. You know, why is it once the judge is out, once you're on the field, once you've got spectators, now the tools have to come off?
Because that's a test at that point.
Yeah, but the dog got there. Those behaviors were installed
in the same way that
aversives.
you're not allowed to positively reinforce behaviors on the field.
My point
it's
is,
a test on both
but
angles.
if they're so confident in the tool, then they should be out there on the field with that tool when they're competing. Let's be real and be honest about it. So that everybody can know.
They should be on the field with the tool when they're competing. No, because it's a test, like I just said. It's a test.
I get it. They're not changing their rules.
In the same way that they don't go out on the field with a ball on their shoulder and
again,
a treat bag.
I will say what I said earlier. I'm more interested in the pet dogs. I could care less about people competing with their dogs. That's unnecessary too.
No, but it shows a level of competence, right? If you're highly successful in IGP or
you can have competence without competing. You can have confidence without competence without using aversives.
Right. No, it's a good way to compare yourself to others and compare different styles of training to others.
What is the IGP?
All different sports.
Yeah, I get if that's your thing. IGP doesn't impress me because it's pattern training. That dog has been in that field doing the same sequences over and over and over and over. They should do damn well. Take a dog out of a shelter that is completely unstable, scared to death, super aggressive, fear aggression, and try that same stuff you're doing on IPG, and you're going to fuck that dog up. Okay. So I've done protection training. I understand when it was Schutzen, nothing's really changed
IGP
much.
is also a genetics test, right? It's testing the genetic quality of the dog. So some dogs you're not going to pass through the testing of their genetic capabilities. It's as much a genetic test as it is a training test.
You know, do you think? Let me ask you a question. Do you think that when you've got a dog that's incredibly well bred for the job that you're going to do and is motivated as hell because they got all this high drive, how difficult is it to train that dog? Because I've owned dogs like that. I know how easy it is to train those dogs, okay? And now you add aversives to it. Shit, you can practically get the dog doing the routine in 3 days.
I've got to reject that, William, and you know that this is just not the case. It is very difficult. The sport of IGP at the highest levels is extraordinarily difficult.
Difficult to win.
To succeed in.
Difficult to win. I'll never say it's not difficult to win. The actual training and getting a well-bred, high-drive dog, which is what everybody uses to do it, that's not that difficult. Not in the big scheme of things. What's difficult, like I said, take a shelter dog that's completely messed up, scared to death, pissing itself, shitting itself, wants to eat anybody that comes near it. Work with that dog, turn that around. Now I'll be impressed. But performances, choreography, pattern training with dogs that were built and bred to excel at that stuff. I mean, granted, you got to put time in. You got to have skill. I'm not doubting that. But in the big scheme of things, that's pretty damn easy if you look at everything that you could be doing out there. And I guess for me, because these days, all I deal with are clinical behavior cases of extreme aggression, fears, phobias, obsessive compulsive behaviors. And I've done the protection training stuff, very familiar with it. Like I said, I've been doing this now 5 decades, over 3 decades professionally. And I've done just about everything. Been on both sides. It would be the stupidest business decision of my life to cross over and stay here if I couldn't produce results. My business would die.
William Bangura, thank you for coming on the show today.
You are very welcome.